Hello and welcome to the Randolph Arts Guild. This is the second class in our Pine Needle Basket series. It's the Raffia Pine Needle Basket class and is one of the intermediate level classes we will offer in this series. You may recall we offered the first Pine Needle Basket basic class in the fall of 2020, and we highly recommend viewing the basic class first as it will have more detailed instructions which may not be covered as well for beginners. You can find these videos on our YouTube page or by visiting our website at www.randolphartsguild.com. And today we have Miss Pat Cheadle, who is a master basket weaver. Hello, Miss Pat. How you doing today?
Good morning. I'm fine and glad to be back with you.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you're going to work on today?
Yes. I brought this basket that isn't quite finished, but all I've got to do is just show you how to finish it. And this is a 1-foot ruler, and I'm just to show you how the size of what the kit will complete. And also, I'm showing you how to use raffia and how to insert walnut slices. And it doesn't have to be just walnut slices. There's any number of things you can insert in there once you decide you want to make something and put something in it.
Okay, so this is a pine needle basket with raffia this time.
With raffia,
okay,
right.
Wonderful.
And this is the raffia. It doesn't come like this. It comes in a bundle. But I take my bundle apart and do everything I can to straighten it out a little bit. And then I can just pull one piece out at a time and still have it somewhat organized. Raffia is altogether different from working with thread because number one, they have gotten where they cut it up and trim it up so much, it's awfully hard to know how this raffia grew. And you have to insert the end that was attached to the main plant. If you don't, it will just shred and shred and shred. I'm sure somewhere along the line this morning I'll pick one up and have no clue which way it goes. And as I find clues along the way, I'll point them out to you. This piece right here looks perfect, the one I just pulled out, because I have something right here that looks like it's sticky, and that probably was attached to Mama. And I think I see a hair. I do see a hair. When you find a hair, and this is probably going to be too small for the camera to pick it up, it's just a tiny little piece here. And when it tells you, if you pull it gently, it'll tell you which way is up. And I was absolutely wrong. This is the end that goes in the needle. I'm going to choose another piece of raffia now. And because raffia is hard to deal with, I'm going to walk it all the way through with you. I don't mean it's impossible. It's just not like cutting off a piece of thread, and I feel like I need to show you. Now see, that one is already splitting itself. This is one piece. Down here you can tell. Up here you can't. So I'm going to put my finger right in here, and I'm going to follow it all the way down, split it where it wants to be split. Now I haven't a clue right now. There's my first clue. See this? I call these hairs. This one is an exceptionally big one, but it doesn't go to the bottom. Breaks off right there. But it'll show you which way it wants to ride, and it wants to go in that direction. Watch it. It'll pull up. It always pulls in the end that is supposed to go in the needle. So I know that both these ends are supposed to go in the needle. That's the top of them. So it's not always that plain. But we do know that this is the top right here. That's the end that's supposed to go in the needle. And I get this damp. It's just a washcloth, clean washcloth, and go right down it. And it is so much easier to handle if it's a little dampness. I see this very uneven end. I'll cut that off. One of the things you need is a pair of scissors, needle nose pliers, and a thimble. I don't know how you can get along without those three, and they are not in your kit. Everything else you need is in the kit. But I couldn't begin to guess your thimble size, and you don't know if you like needle nose or the plain in the way of the pliers or the scissors. I'm going to minimize how to start a basket here because it's very well explained in the first little kit. And if you took that one, I'm going to soften my thread here. I have like a little washcloth here. Okay, I think that's work. And you do this, whether you're using thread or raffia, the same way. I find the flattest part of, if I'm using a center, you find the flattest part, take 7 needles, and I like to get them all a different length so they don't all cut off on me at the same place. And just start. The difference in this and the raffia in how you start it is, with the thread, you tie a knot, a triple knot. With this, there's no knot tying. Bring it up, twist it around. Just twist it a couple of times, very tight, and then hold your finger on it while you cover it. And that's the way you start one of these. And then go on to the next hole. And as you can see by the length of this, that happens, my friends. And when that happens, the only thing you can do is just start over.
So we're gonna walk through that one more time?
Okay. I hope this is enough. Whether you're using thread or raffia, you need to get 7, I take 7 needles. And I try to get them all different lengths so they don't all run out at the same place and just have a little wad right there. And I put them upside down. You notice I'm very careful to make sure that this white end goes into the coil first. But now I'm turning them upside down because I'm going to cut that part off as I go. And the reason for that is it's much thinner at this end. And you find the flattest part of your center if you're using a center. And maybe one day we'll show you how to do one without using a center. And pull your raffia through. And you don't tie it, you twist it. Give it a good twist here. And then cover it. Because if you try tying this and trying it tight, it will surely break. It's very strong, and yet it isn't. And I know that sounds funny. And it will split, won't hurt a thing. In fact, sometimes it's almost prettier if it does split because it will spread itself out a little better. It's harder to work with than the thread is. But it's very rewarding because it gives a different look altogether.
So you kind of wrap it through, and then you just keep threading it through to cover that piece up.
Right. I use the V-stitch, whether I'm using this or whether I'm using sinew or whether I'm using the thread. I love the V-stitch. And once you've got a stitch in there, you start putting in more, just like you did in the first video. And this time we put the white in first, and you try to get that under. You're going to build up your base very gently so that when you come back through here, you can see where it started, but it's not going to be bumpy and lumpy. This is the only part that I have a little trouble with because my hands don't behave like they used to. But take 2, no more than 3 threads with each stitch to build that up. And you're trying your very best to put the flat end down right on the under those first pine needles. Sounds difficult, but as you do it more and more, it gets easier and easier to do.
Can you explain the V-stitch for those that may not remember?
Absolutely. The V, look at that. Doesn't that look like a V? I call this the V-stitch. And that's made by putting 2 stitches in each hole on the base. And the reason I love this V-stitch, number 1, I like the way it looks better. And number 2, things do happen. You could get your raffia broken or cut, or just worn out from handling or something. But if you've got the V-stitch, it'll hold while you repair it, and nobody will ever know that it was broken. But if you go in there just one time, it'll take off and just ruin the basket. This will hold it. It also tells you exactly where to put your next stitch. Now see, since that's divided, it covers that and makes it, I think it's pretty. Just makes it look pretty. Now, this is my gauge. This is my center. This is what I call a switch. Because to me that looks sort of like a switch sticking out there. And that's the way I'll refer to them. Now, see that little white end right there? When we put it in upside down, I'm going to cut him out. And as we come to them, we're going to cut them off so that it just isn't pretty to see those little white ends sticking up there. If you have done the first kit, seen the first video, this will be much easier than if you haven't. So even if you just look at the first video, because this being video 2 and it's a little more advanced than that first one. The new thing that I was going to show you today is number 1, how to handle raffia, how to use it, how to start it, and then I wanted to show you how to put in a walnut slice, not just a walnut slice, also how to, it may be beads that you want to put in there, but it's how to insert beads in your basket, or a slice of bamboo, or anything that you want to put in there. I leave the white end on them. I know a lot of people say they don't. I have watched several of those others, and we all do it differently. But I leave this white end only for one reason. If you try to insert this, it will break, because that's very, very brittle on that end and very tiny. This one is a little tougher. And if I put that in the middle, it never shows in the first place. The second place, after you've picked up those needles, leaving that white end on will probably give you about another inch on your pine needle. And I want as many inches on that pine needle as I can get. I want it as long as I can get it. So I'm going to lay this down now, because we have worked on it in the first video, and I can explain it in this one, just to save time. I have done the first part of this walnut. I've got 5 rows on here. And once I come through here, I'll have 5 rows on this. And the walnut is after, as you put on that number 5. So I'm going to put this down now and thread my needle and show you. I have already decided which end is up, and I may be wrong. I've been wrong many a time. That is a damp washcloth, it just helps this to stay together just a little bit, because it is just, this is a natural thing. It grows in Madagascar, and it is very, compared to the thread, it's difficult to work with. But after you get used to it, you don't mind it, because I think it's beautiful. Now I'm going to reinsert, I'm going to look for a weak looking piece of thread here. See that, how much that one spread out? This one didn't. So I'm going to insert my needle right there and go up. We don't tie knots in this, remember? You just have to put it in, and if you keep your work tight enough, there is not hardly, if you yourself started trying to pull that out, you would have a problem. So it's not going to come loose once you work it through here. See, that one's a little thinner, so I'm going to just copy him. Just cover him over and do the same thing. And then nobody's going to know where I reinserted my raffia. And we will always want it to look like you made it with one piece of raffia or one thread. And if you hide it well enough, that's the way it'll look. Now I'm up here ready to start back into my V-stitch. Just bring it right back in there like you've been using this thread all the time. And I'm going to work my way around to the center. but I want to make sure that I get this. I don't go past it. So I think it would be right there. You want it just as straight across as you can get it. So I'm going to remember it from there right up. Okay, now if you look right here, this stitch, the V-stitch, the raffia has a tendency to close up. Just take your needle and part it there. And the stitch I'm using is staying close to the one on the right. If I wanted this to twirl, I would put it close to the one on the left. I don't want it to twirl. I didn't start twirling it, I'm starting it straight up. So we will continue with a straight up. If you get used to it, not looking at the back. I know people, it turns it over on the back with every stitch. You can do it so much faster if you just learn. Look, sort of like playing golf. Look exactly where you want that stitch to come out, and before long, that's where you'll be putting it. I want that needle to come out right there. I'm not gonna look at the back. I'm gonna move this over to the back, and I'm gonna come out right there, halfway down, and right beside of that straight up and down stitch. And it's just a matter of getting used to it. Go back, come out the same place. And we've got to be a little bit careful because we do not want to go past the place where we are going to insert that walnut. Now this is going to be a little time consuming to get all the way around because I don't want to leave you until I've got that walnut slice on both ends completely incorporated into this basket. And that's from the bottom, the first time you attach it to the coil, to when you wrap it up. Wrap around it and go over it. Sometimes your pine needles are real curvy on the end, and a lot of people are scared of that, but you don't need to be. No matter how curvy it is, pick it up, put it in here. If it swings off, that's okay. Your gauge will smooth it out when it gets there. And now I'm going to show you how to put that walnut on there. It's kind of important that you see this and see that walnut slice has the two holes right here. And I want to go through there and then come back out and go back into this. So I'm going to try my very best to hold this, and I do need about 6 hands, and I only got 2. Shouldn't complain about having 2 hands, because that's about as good as it gets. Okay, you go through the first one, and bring him down on your coil just as close as you can, and then go into your V-stitch over here. So he's coming from that stitch over there, and he's going to this second stitch here, and then you come right back in, but make sure he isn't tied up on one of these little things that could break him or cut him. You get him all the way over there and slip him if you have to. Get him nice and tight. And here. There, that looks good. And you can hold that in the back while you get that other stitch through there. Oops. I'm going all the way from here to Georgia with my needle because I don't have any control. Don't feel I can turn that walnut loose. There. I want him to be exact. There he is. Now he's situated there. It might be better if I just let him go across that hump to the other side of it. Maybe he'll quit wiggling. There he is. Now, I think he's going to sit there nicely that way. Then just go on over with your V-stitch like normal. And let me show you again how to start a new piece of thread, because this is kind of important and a little difficult. This one right here looks to me like it's just a little bit smaller than, say, that one or this one. So I'm going to reinforce it by just covering it from down here. Put your thread in the same place it came out before. Now see, that one's a little hard to pull, so that's why you've got a needle nose pliers here. Pull him on through. I do very tight work. And if you do yours tight, you will appreciate it much more. It looks prettier. You can use it better. Everything if it's tight. I just stuck myself, and I hope I don't bleed on it. I'll watch it for a minute or two. And again, get those needle nose pliers and pull it through from the other side. No, it's not going to bleed. That's good. We got a break. Just see, there's a very thin one.
Now, the neat thing that I've seen with raffia is that you can get it in different colors too. And I've seen a basket or two that has this done. That has
and you liked them?
colors.
Did you like them?
Oh, I thought they were really pretty. I've seen Easter baskets
Mm-hmm.
that were done like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dollar General had some small little kits with different colors, and I liked those. I saw them in Alabama, but I haven't seen any of those here. And the ones I saw in Hobby Lobby, the colors were dark. Well, I didn't like that, but I didn't. Maybe I need to get some raffia and dye my own.
Yeah, I think the one that I'd seen was bright Easter colors, like bright pinks and blues and greens and yellows.
Blue, green, and yellows, but not dark.
Nope, they were all bright colors.
There you go. That's the problem. That's all I found when I went out to look for some. I want to show you something. I'm going to show you how to go up this without attaching it to a coil, to the basket, and cover that, and then come down on the other side. But I also want to explain to you why I use 2 stitches on each end to put in that walnut, when the others I used 1 stitch to get it in complete. See that? And that is because on this one, the way it came out, there was no 1 stitch. If I put it here, I'm pointing that direction. If I put it here, I'm pointing in that direction. That one might have done it, but there's nothing comparable over here. So this way, I think I've got it square. And now I want to show you how to continue your weave when you have nothing under it. I just wrapped that, and I went around behind that this time with this stitch. Hold it here with your fingers. You're going to make stitches in mid-air, and then go through it. Make sure that your raffia is on this side of the stitch. When you come through, come in between. Hold on to this until you get it there, and then go up above it. Now see what's going to be left there. Looks like a V-stitch.
So you're doing it instead of attaching it to the previous one.
You don't attach it to anything. You're doing it mid-hair. This is the same stitch you'll use if you decide to make a handle. Only it'll go much farther than we're going to go. We're just going to do this until we reach the top of that walnut slice. And then we're going to attach it to the walnut slice. But no matter what you do in pine needle basketry, keep that coil even. If you don't, your basket, keep it full and keep it even. Your basket's going to be up and down, or it's going to be very floppy, and neither one of them's attractive. So keep your coil filled. See these fingers? That's going to hold it in midair. Now you can poke it through here with a needle, but you got to pull it all away. I take a shortcut and go around. It just saves a little bit of time. And then come right through here, right through it. And this is one of the reasons I insist on this size needle, even though it's hard to find. It doesn't mess up my pine needles. I didn't break a single pine needle. If you've got one of those with a great big eye, chances of you breaking some pine needles when you go through there, if you've got a tight coil, and you need a tight coil, you need to keep it full. And I've heard people say never put in more than 3. Well, sometimes you have to. What you want is a tight coil.
wrapping it all the way around, coming back, and then going.
And then I'm going right through it. And see, that looks like this stitch. And I've got something to go by in the next round. Now, I'm up to the walnut. Now watch what I do. First of all, I'm gonna make sure I got a good tight coil and good and even. Slide it up here. And this time, I'm going through that walnut. And you're trying to keep these stitches about the same length apart as the stitches down here. You're gonna do it twice, but it's hard to control it when it's on that walnut because it's got all the room in the world to jump around in. But control your stitches just as much as you can. Keep it good and tight. And there's something else I can tell you. I don't do it, but a lot of people will wet those needles so they will wrap better, but mine don't break. And if I get some damp and then don't use them right away, they may mildew or mold. And I don't want any molded or mildewed pine needles in my baskets. And I do wet them, put them in the refrigerator until they get where if I'm going to start it without a center. But never when I'm using them. And the most I would do is put, a damp washcloth in a plastic bag with some needles just to get them a little bit damp. So they are easier to work with when they're damp. Whoopsie, if I'm not careful now, I'm going to start breaking raffia.
So you're just wrapping it around through the knot at this point.
And I'm not going to be able to work with that because it keeps hitting that place right there. So that's going to look a little closer together, and I'll have to make it spread out the way it's supposed to with the next round. And what you can't control on one round, sometimes you can the next round. And I'll show you what I mean when I get back to it. Just come on across the top of that walnut. And see, those stitches are too close together, but the next time I come, I can hold it right down to that. And put my stitch there. You've still got a little bit of control, even though that walnut's really controlling it. There's a bump on it that I can't seem to get around there. I'm gonna see if I can do it on right here. That's where the stitch needs to be. So hold it, and I use every finger I've got with this. If you look, that one's holding the thread tight. This one's holding. When you don't have 6 hands, use all 10 fingers. Use 1 to open it up and 2 to slide it in the middle. Just keep bringing it on around. Now see, I'm not gonna have that. Not putting up with that. Turn him so the flat side goes down, and the chances are he won't do it again. Well, he did. Let's see if I can. I'm going to cover that anyway. So I'm going to take this opportunity to show you what to do with one that won't behave itself. If he's going to insist on popping up, let him pop up. Go ahead and wrap him with your thread. Hold it. And there's another one. And we'll show you in just a minute how we're going to control him. He thinks he's in charge. Slide it under the raffia. Nobody will ever know he did that. It's like a little kid that you take out and you can't do anything with him. Do a little cover up here. Okay, and keep your coil nice and tight. Going to do the same thing on the other side. And I like to count how many stitches down before I attached it to here. Keep everything as even as you possibly can. And while I'm over here, I'm gonna count them. I've got 1, 2, 3 unattached. So, I'm going for 1 here. That looks very uneven, but like I said, the next time I can pull that down, and that'll make them just about as even as they can get.
So when you say next time, that's when you go around
When
the
I get
last time. Gotcha.
Go around on the next round. Okay, there's 1 unattached one. Now I guessed that I could do all 3 of my stitches and then attach it to the basket with that I had enough raffia for that. That's something else you need to look at. Look at the length of your raffia and see, because it's very difficult to put on a new piece when you're not working on the basket, but you're working on the wrap. Hold it. Here's number 2.
We're going through this time. Gotcha.
Now that one, well, the main problem with it when they split, sometimes they get to where they're like people. They get to where they don't like to cooperate with each other. So you may have to force it a little bit. Uh-oh, that looks like it's the wrong end, and it is. You have to stay conscious of what you're doing, because they will flip, and sometimes they flipped in the pan when I was washing them, and I missed it. You don't put that fine end first or it'll break all to pieces. You can't push it. Okay, and here's my second stitch. Third stitch, last one. Hold it there, and then go right through the coil. Fixing to come unthreaded. I am getting a little short, but these are not very long to begin with, and so if you just get used to throwing them and not using up every bit of it, you'll find out you will change thread over and over and over and over. Spend a lot more time thread that needle getting it started again, which will slow up your weaving. Now, it's waiting for me right there. I'm going to attach it right here. And you've got 1, 2, 3, and there. 1, 2, 3, and there to here. And that's where the thread ran out, and I was right. I thought I had enough to do that. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull him through. There he is. And it's just barely. That's pushing your luck a little bit. But if it'll do it, that's all you need. Now, I've got to hide that thread, and I've got to hide it in such a way that nobody's going to know when you're looking at it. So slide it all the way to here, put it underneath there, take your finger and press down, because you can't get it through the wood. Come out at the other side, pull that through. Now, what are you going to do about that? And this is what you do.
Cut it off.
Lay it on a flat surface. And don't do this, or you might cut that. Go flat across, and you're not going to cut a stitch. Go flat across. And every once in a while, you sort of need to trim him up. I get the feeling there's one more somewhere that I'm not seeing right now. And you just sort of cut off the hairs, give him a shave if you need to. And that looks nice. And like I said, when I come back, I will pull this down to here, and I'll go from this stitch to that stitch to what happened here. Oh, that one went way off over yonder. Okay, I'll push that one that way. And you try to even them up as you go that way. I put 3 rows on now after I put in the walnut. And it's not a perfect spot to lift it, but right here is where I started my basket. And I wanted it to get a little more solid than that before I lifted it. Well, see, I can count from here now. So I'm going to start up here, even though it's fairly close in. And it's just got 3 rows there. There was no good place to start it. So what you do is you figure out where that basket started, and it started right here. And if I come all the way over to here and then start up, I've got 3 here and 2 here by the time I cover that up. So the only time to start up is right now. So This is something you need to keep your mind on. I don't know if y'all noticed or not, but I'm trying to use more permanent things here instead of the drinking straw. On the last one, I used a piece of metal. Some of the states have outlawed plastic straws. The plastic works great, but I got this at Lowe's Home Improvement Shop, and it's just a little copper tubing, and it's very easy to cut up with a saw, proper saw, and I cut that, and I'm going to use it permanently. Now, that's not going to wear out and split like a plastic straw would. Then my granddaughter, I mentioned to her that I'd using something more permanent. She shows up with this plastic straw that's, they say, you know, you can use over and over again and wash, and so I cut that up, and that's very good to use too. So it's just an alternative, and it's something you don't have to keep cutting and keep running down to Chick-fil-A to get the straw. So now I'm fixing to bring it up. Like I said, the spot isn't perfect, but it's the best one we've got. And you just pull that up, and I bring it back a little bit until I get it. You continue the same stitch you've been doing, which is go in the V. Now I may have to back it off to get in there, but I'm sure going to pull it for all I'm worth to get it in the right spot. And one of the things I wanted to show you, see this pine needle? Can you see how curved that is on the end? You might say that's impossible to use, but it isn't. And once I get down on the ground and pick up all these pine needles and get them in the house and chop that binder off and pull it off and throw it away, wash my needles in dishwashing soap, rinse them about 2 or 3 times, put them down to dry, and then pack them away. I don't care how much they curve. I'm going to use every needle in there because it's too much trouble to fix them up and then get choicy about that. So fill your gauge. Be sure and keep it full and tight. Go on to the next one. I see what you're doing there. We're not going to let him get away with it. I'm going to push him right under. And get right in the middle of the V, close to the very first stitch again, and put your next stitch there, and keep pulling him up to the top. And that one with a funny end, I guess he's trying to show y'all that sometimes they won't let me do what I'm supposed to do. But I'm going to win that battle. These are about the curliest I've ever seen. I don't know why I didn't notice that. But maybe it's a good thing. You need to see that even if they're not all nice and straight, they're all nice and clean, and they're going to do what I tell them to do. Now, when you get on a curve, your stitches get farther and farther away from each other fast. And see, you're on a curve right here. And if they get too far apart, you can throw a stitch right in the middle, and it might be observed by some, but certainly not by many. It won't hurt the looks of it a bit. And this is getting very thin near the end, and I don't know why. I don't know everything there is to know about raffia. It's a natural thing, and I think it makes a beautiful basket. But it's got some peculiar manners, some peculiar ways too. Feel that gauge. Keep a nice, good coil. Okay, this is my last stitch with this raffia. But it seems to be wanting to get thinner. Sometimes you have to use your hand or your needle to separate that, but you put 2 stitches in there. And if the raffia spreads out enough, it will cover it and make it look like it's all 1 stitch, and I want to go right in between it. So I have to show it who's boss here. Now, I've got to stop it, because that's all I'm trusted with. And from where we're sitting now, to stop it, I'm going to have to go in and out several times. What I'm trying to do is fix it so if that raffia gets caught on something, it's not going to take off and undo. I have never, ever had one unravel, you might say. Because when I finish it like this, put it through these pine needles, and this is another way of guaranteeing that it never gets loose. Put it right up under one of these stitches and then just go right down through here. and pull it. And then put your scissors right on there and cut it. And who knows where it was cut. That'll be okay. Okay. I'm going to go a little bit farther with going up the sides, because when you're going up the sides, it's going to do everything it can to go not up this way, but to go like that, up, not in straight up, but kind of pan. I don't know what you call that.
Kind of a little bit, angled out a little bit.
Yeah, angled out a little bit. And it'll look more like a biscuit pan than it will something where you go straight up the sides. And I'm trying to teach you to go straight up. And anytime you want to, you can flare them out. That's not easy. That's not hard. That's very easy. The hard thing is to go straight up the sides, and I'm going to teach you how you do that. First of all, I'm going to bring this back. I'm going to move it back, and I'm going to find out where that V-stitch is, and then I'm going to pull it back straight up on top of it. And it's kind of hard that you get to keep your stitches matching. Well, now I can see where that came up. So I'm going to come up right in there, same place. And right on top. Every once in a while you'll have to spin this, or otherwise it'll get twisted. I don't know why. I just know it does it. And see, that one turned itself around. If you don't see that little white tip, you've got the wrong end. Remember me telling you I use it regardless? This one's broken. Got kind of twisted in there somehow. I'm just going to bury it in the pack, and I'm going to use it anyway. Because if you wanted to, you could find something wrong with about half of these needles. After all, they've been handled and washed, and deer walked on them, and possums crossed them, and all kinds of things. And you can get so particular, you only use about half of what you pick up. I just make a point to use everything, because the time will come when you're going to need one about 3 or 4 inches long. And if you've saved that one, it's 3 or 4 inches long, and you don't have to take a good one and cut him. Right, like that. I'm not going to put that into my coil yet. But when I start shutting it down, that one has turned itself around too. Then you don't want it to. You don't want to go several inches with it flat. And the answer is use a few short needles in there. So you can use them all, is what I'm trying to say. Now I'm pretty much right smack on top of it. Don't you agree?
Mm-hmm.
So we can stop this one at any time and go to the next one. But for some reason it's wanting to bunch up on me back there, and I'm not quite sure why. So I'm going to bring it through real easy. Could be I've got this one in backwards. Now, I may be illustrating to you what happens if you get the wrong end in your needle. Put it in instead of putting it in the way it grew. That wouldn't be a bad thing to illustrate, you know. Just show them. Don't panic when you get that. All it means is you've put the wrong end in your needle. Didn't do it that time, did I?
I think it's just
Ah, yes.
getting tighter.
See?
There we go. There
See,
we go.
I do have it shredded in the wrong, headed in the wrong direction. So I'm going to anchor it off and turn it around. If you get it put in your needle right, it will not do that. So what I'm going to do is anchor it and then turn it around. So if when it starts that, and I don't even mind that it did that because I've been trying to tell you what happens, but the best thing teaching in the world is to show you. And that's what happens, see? And see? So we're just going to turn this thing around. And I'll show you what to do with all of that stuff that you piled up there. Now, while I know that this is the end that's supposed to go in that needle, I'm going to put it in the needle. My little 4-year-old came in to see me yesterday, walked through the living room and said, stooped down, raised up, she said, "Mama, here's your needle." And I thought, oh, honey, am I glad you got that up there. Mama should never let a needle slip away from her like that because you could have come in barefooted.
It's funny that she saw that.
I said, "How did you know that was down there?" And she says, "It's shiny." Okay, that takes care of it. And see, I make that error quite often. Because the way they package it nowadays, you have no way of knowing which end. They used to just pull the whole thing on there and you'd have to trim it up in the back and in the front and all of this. And now they chop it off on each end. And there went all your clues for which end goes in the needle. Because I don't think they sell that much for using in a needle. Most people buy it to decorate wreaths and things like that with. I'll have to start over because I let it slide through. I'm making every mistake that you can make today. But at least you see how you straighten them up once you've made them. I pulled that through my fingers. Now, it's right back here and get it to where it's supposed to be. I wouldn't advise you to get scissors and pliers, same color, which is what I've got here. I have to look.
Pick up the wrong ones.
Yep. The closer you keep that gauge to your work, the more even it's going to be, because you can shoot a lot of them through there and you just go right on past your gauge. And there's one more thing I want to point out. See that one broke right there? That makes my raffia smaller. And I don't think it's as pretty if it gets too small. I'm gonna do that one twice. And I went ahead and reused it and shredded it, threaded it on the other end to show you that it no longer does that shredding. Here's one that's stuck together. I never put in 3 at the same time. I'm put in the 3 needles, but I don't want them all to stop at the same place or enter at the same place. Makes it a little bit bunchy there. It's up.
You learned this from from which tribe?
From what?
Which Native American tribe did you learn this from?
I didn't learn it from them.
Oh, okay.
I learned that they're the ones that did it from seeing one of their baskets in an Indian museum. But when I went down we had a mission down at the Choctaw with an after-school program and everything. And when I went down there to help put their library on the Dewey Decimal System, I saw all those pine needles laying there. And I kept asking them if they did the baskets, and none of them knew what I was talking about. So I went down and showed them.
Oh my goodness.
See, now that has broken right there. When I said the raffia is a little harder, it's more time consuming. So I'm going to cut that off right there, rethread my needle to bring in that little piece. So it's the Choctaw tribe that I'm working with. A Choctaw band, a band of Choctaws down there that some of the Choctaws went on the Trail of Tears and some of them didn't. And they hid. And it's the descendants of those that hid that I work with.
Okay. And where are they located?
They're McIntosh, Alabama, about 20 miles on the south side of, north side of Mobile. And I made some of the best friends I've ever had in my life, I think, down there.
Nice.
Just learned to love an awful lot of them. You don't want it to cut off bluntly. You want it to ease off. You understand what I've been trying to show you. It's not just the V-stitch that I'm continuing, but I am pulling this up now to go up the sides, and it is up there. And the next row will be right smack on top of this one and go straight up. And you do that all the way around, and when you get right here, you'll go right over it. You'll never know after you've gone up the sides, it's going to be very hard to look at the back and tell where you started. Right here's the last one, and I'll show you what I mean. Look how difficult it is to find out where it started going up. And I've been making these baskets a long time, and I have to really trace it down before I know. I can find it better in here. I know that I found the flat side to start it on. So it started, my first stitches were right in here. There's the first stitch. And the way I know, let's see. Oh, it started right here with one stitch. And you go all the way around with two, and you get right to here. You go back in that same place, and you're up above there, and that's how I know for sure. With that, and you have to hunt it. Even after you've made as many baskets as I have, you have to hunt it. Now this is the last thing that I think I haven't shown you, and that's how to stop it. Well, you want to stop it about the same place where you started it, except when you first start, it's so minute it doesn't matter. So I'm going to stop it right here.
How many rows is it that you go up?
How many rows up? Well, this is the way you count them. You count the outside stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've been 10 rows, put 10 rows up. You don't have to. And if you see you're running out of needles, maybe you put more in here. But if you take care of every one of the needles, you should have a few needles left after you make a basket like this. Because I was very careful to make sure you had enough. So this basket is a little smaller here than it is over here. And now we counted over there. Now let's count right here, and it should be 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I didn't count this little one right here, and that's 9. So now, when they're making it even on all sides, we want to bring this. We want to make sure it gets to right here. I guess that's the stitch before you tie it into there. And if you went to this one, it wouldn't hurt. But you don't want to stop here, because you can still tell that's just a little bit higher. And you want to stop putting in everything. Now's where you're looking very carefully for the right length of pine needle. You want the shorter ones. And those that I laid out, I guess I just covered them up. Even this gets important now.
So the shorter needles near the end are important.
You want to fill it in where it's not, you don't want to end with a bump, but you don't want to end where it still looks like it's got a dip. So you're still putting back needles in here, but you don't want them to go too far. You want them to all come out sort of at the same place out there. See, that's just about right. You want to keep this fairly full, but not totally full. And I don't know why I can't find short needles in here, except this was exceptionally good. These were exceptionally good pine needles. And I think it's kind of funny, the people that brought me these pine needles live near Asheboro. And the way neither one of them owned a pine needle tree. So what they did was they saw a man that was mowing lawns.
Okay.
And they went and asked him if he knew of anybody that had long needle pines in their yard. And he said, yeah, I know mow a yard for a man that's got 2 or 3 long needles. And he said, would you mind giving us his name? We'd like to see if he'll let us pick up some pine needles to make baskets. So they go and knock on his door, and he said, you help yourself to every last thing out there if you want it. So
he has to clean up too.
Yeah, if you've got a long needle pine, you know what he meant, because they really shed the needles. And he probably had most of them to deal with. Of course, long needle pines are very good with your shrubbery, make nice baskets, and have to be cleaned up every so often. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have access to one and need some, that's one way you can find them. If you see now, I'm looking for not long ones, but more moderate sized ones. And then for long, I don't like cutting them off. I like for my work to matter. When I'm working with pine needles, and I see a short one like that, I don't throw it, I put it to one side, and I've already got those collected when I get to this stage when I'm home. But I just didn't.
So that might be something that they can do ahead of time.
That's right. It is something they do ahead of time, because I would not put that in if I were going around. You want it to matter more than that, but right now we just want it to close properly, and I think it's just about to. Some of you are going to want to put a stitch in between every one of these, and that can be done to where it's pretty. I don't see where I did it on this basket, but a lot of times I do have to, when you get to the wrap part. No, right here I did it. See, the stitch went here, and it went here. And because they're so far apart, I put one right between.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. You can tell it if you hunt it. And I did the same thing over here. They don't spread out when you're going up the sides much. They do some as you get the basket rounds there. Let me see, now that may be about enough of that. They're going to come out just about exactly at the right place. And we've still got a pretty nice coil. We don't want it to get thin too fast. And guess what else? We're going to have to put in one more piece of raffia. I had to cut that piece off and get another piece of raffia. And I got one big enough to wind up on. I'm having a little bit of trouble here. There we go.
Just a little bit. There we go.
Our last piece of raffia. We're closing it up. Well, it isn't our last piece because we've got to come back across it. That's the last piece we're going to be putting needles in. So you just stay with me for a little while now. I see that's getting thinner, but we're right where we wanted to end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And it's not really, really thin yet. It's just a little bit thin. I don't believe in following it down to quit putting needles in for a long, long time. Go on with your switch, and you can bring it down slowly.
Makes it go faster when you don't have to load all the needles in, huh?
Mm-hmm. You wouldn't believe how many students I can't make them put it in every time. He said,
Oh.
well, it gets awful to have to put it in every time. And then it'll be up and down,
Yep, bumpy.
and it takes a much longer time to make a basket. If that switch is half size,
Oh, gotcha.
where if you go make 10 rounds and have a good size on the side, they'll need to go 20 to get it to the same height. And all because they won't take the time to load that. And that's why I appreciate these long needles so much.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine trying to get in 5-inch needles? And I think that's because that's all they have, surely. Now, my husband planted a tree in our front yard as soon as I got interested in this. And I've got needles galore in my front yard. But mine are about 10 to 12 inches long. And directly across the street, in my neighbor's yard, hers are more like 12 to 14.
Oh, wow.
And then the two ladies I was telling you who raked the yard of the man,
Yep.
those were 14 to 16. But every once in a while, I go out there. Now, see, I've just got one needle. I'm not going to bring that one needle all the way over to here. So I'm going to cut it at an angle. Just one needle. I wouldn't cut several, because you can really tell it. But if it's one, no more than two, that comes out longer than any of the rest of them, cut it off and make a point like the rest of the needles have. You see what's happened with my raffia?
Mm-hmm.
You have to watch this stuff. It's got all kinds of games that it loves to play.
Oops, sorry about the
For
jiggle.
one thing, it is very twisted right now. First thing I'm going to try to do is get it untwisted. There's that. And then it's separated. So I've got to figure out there's the one you pull. Now you got to get it straight or it'll do it again. And that's what this does. Now what the thread does is it gets real happy with itself, jumps up when you pull it through, and gets in a knot.
Uh-huh, I remember.
Yep. With itself. I never could figure that out, except it's twisted and twisted and twisted, and that's how it does it. Now, you do the same thing you do when you've got doing the thread with what's left, but look at these that are sticking up. If you pull them off, just break them off. Rip that one off too. And then you turn around and go backwards. It makes a nice little X on top.
Okay, so you're just doing the one stitch all the way around.
Uh-huh.
Gotcha.
You go all the way around with this on top. Now, I sold a basket that one of my Indian friends made for $400.
Oh my goodness.
And I believe if it had been anywhere except in this, if it had been where it needs to be, it would have been more like 800.
It's just nice to be able to pass this tradition down. I mean, it's
Oh, I'm
It's
so
such
glad
a-
you
yeah,
said that,
no,
because that's
it's-
the way I feel.
which is why we do what we do here, is to
Well, I-
kind of, bring out different cultural traditions to people who may never have seen it before. And these are used, you know, to traditionally to hold food and.
Right, and I'll bet you, I was thinking about it this morning coming down the road. What did they use? They couldn't get this from Madagascar, and they certainly didn't have the thread. And I thought, palm leaves, that was what they would have used. I have some on my back porch. I'm going to make one of these using palm leaves. I went to Charleston and studied their baskets, and I took some of mine. And I was very surprised because they asked me to come down and teach them the pine needle.
Oh my goodness gracious.
And I bought some of their sweetgrass. They all buy it. Did you know that? The government grows it for them, and they pay a certain amount to buy it.
Oh my goodness.
And they're beautiful. They're done with palm leaves. And so I mentioned that to, I was doing a talk down in eastern North Carolina near the, well, not near, we were right on the ocean. And I mentioned that they did it with palm leaves, and I said, I, of course, don't have palm leaves where I am. Well, I had palm leaves before I went home. I'm down to my last stitch. I need to go over that and see that loop. We're not going to go over that the same way we normally would. We want to we don't want to overdo, make it look like we have wrapped it, make it obvious that's where we started and stopped. So we're not going back over to close it off. We're going down, and we're going down it in such a way that nobody's ever going to know we're going down if we can help it. So we'll go there, and then find a place on the back where we can hide our stitch. If you're trying to hide a stitch, stick your needle under, and then your raffia will show up under. And if you've got a weak looking stitch in there, and by that I mean where the raffia didn't spread out, it looks like it's just one tiny little sewing thread thick, make it come out there. You've got a chance to cover it up.
And I'll tell you what, when you look at Miss Pat's baskets, you cannot tell where she started or stopped or where any of these stitches.
Yep, and it might not matter to anybody besides me, but to me it's just a nice thing that, you know, you can't tell where any of that happened. And we did it with one piece of raffia and a few great big old long pine needles. Now the next thing you do, and this is important in case I didn't tell you the last time, no matter what you sew it up with, you are going to miss a few things when you go through. And see now, I'm not sticking my point down that way. I'm laying it across here because it will not show, it will not make a difference, and you will not cut anything that's important. Now the next thing you do, that finishes the basket except for one thing, and that is you want to run your hands slow and carefully back by, and anything that will catch your fingers, make sure you break it off and it goes under one of those stitches. You don't want somebody to say, ooh, that's a beautiful basket, pick it up and get a pine needle stuck in them. So very slow and carefully and easy, and I do it with a naked hand. Go back and see if anything is sticking, and if it is, bring it backwards and pull it off. I do this with everything, but man, do it slow. And one of the nice things about this raffia, it spreads out nice and wide, and you can hide a lot of sins under that raffia. I'm just about through here. This is a 1 foot ruler, and it's 1 foot by 9.5. And what I like to do, and what all of my grandchildren and my children have done with the baskets I've given, and you take the needle and thread that I have right here, and you go in and find hold it like that so you'll know where to go in. And go in and out at one of those places with this, tie a knot of it in the back, hang it up when you're not on the wall, when you're not using it. It looks really pretty hanging on the wall.
Yeah.
And I had a friend that used to throw her mail in hers.
That's funny. And when you use the polyurethane, it gets that darker color in the like the other baskets that you have.
No,
It's
it
not?
doesn't turn that dark.
Oh, okay.
That's because of the brown thread.
Oh, okay.
This looks lighter because of this white. It's really funny how much it changes the appearance of it, but it sure does. There's a thimble is necessary because you will, if you don't have it, you'll unconsciously start pushing that needle, and I have done that and pushed it right into the tip of my finger. And if you don't think you've got a mess for a long time, so put that thimble on the finger to push it with. And they're selling something now they didn't used to have. They have these thimbles now with a little ridge around them, and then the places in there for the head of the needle to come through. And the needle's not going to slip off and go this way the way the old-timey ones did. It's got a ring around there that'll hold it. That's a good needle, a thimble. And this one is the one I love. Now, that silicone will keep that on there. When you reach over here, it's not going to fall off. And
I see, yeah.
Whatever, it holds it on there, and you keep pushing. And when I start to get that off at the end of the day, sometimes I have to wiggle and jiggle it a little bit to get it off. But that I just love. You can order those, and that'll stay with you. But don't. If you've never used a thimble in your life, please use a thimble with this, because you will push it hard enough to go through your finger.
We don't want that to happen. So some of the things that you will need for this, and that are included in the kits that you will or can purchase through us, is you will need a pair of scissors, and you will need a set of needle nose pliers. Those are not included in the kit, and neither is the thimble. So those you'll have to provide yourself, and as well as a clean rag that you can wet. But in our kits included to make this size basket that you see here on the table, it includes the raffia. It also includes a set of pine needles. It has 2 needles.
These are embroidery needles, which means that the eye is a little bit larger, and it's a number 2. And don't go bigger with the eye or the needle, or you take a chance on breaking up your pine needles when you go through them. But this works great.
As well as the gauges. Now this particular kit has 2 plastic gauges on it. And then we have the center piece as well as 2 walnut slices. And your kit is going to come included with the instructions, written instructions, as well as some nice labels that talk about the history, as well as the care of the basket, if you wanted to give it away as a gift.
Or sell it.
Or if you wanted to sell it. And Miss Pat today has also included this cute little bags that these kits come in. Now this one's a seashore one, but there's all different prints that they'll come in. But you can purchase these kits online by going to www.randolphartsguild.com and going to our store, online store, to purchase for the basket kits. Miss Pat, I appreciate you coming in with us today and showing us how to do this. And I look forward to any questions that anyone has for Miss Pat. You can leave them on our YouTube page or on our website.
I really appreciate you asking me, because I enjoy doing this. I live alone, and it fills in a lot of time. And when I get through, I have something that I can give as a gift, hang it on my wall, or sell it.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
You have a wonderful day. Take care.
Thank you, and you.